Hello, my Wolfpack, Charlie Black 20 back again with the final installment of the Texas Revolution video, where today we will be covering the build-up and Battle of San Jacinto, as well as the ramifications of it. So, in early March, right before the fall of the Alamo, the Texas government has declared that they will be independent, named Sam Houston commander of the all forces in Texas, volunteer and regular, and to build an army to relieve the Alamo. As we know from previous videos, Sam Houston did not relieve the Alamo because he did not have the forces to do so. And now he quickly learns of not only the Alamo's fall, which he sends orders to all Texas forces, including Colonel Fannin at Goliad, to reunite further east in Texas so that they can fall back to a position, gain more numbers and volunteers as they move, and stretch out the Mexican supply lines and hopefully find an opportunity. It's not long after they begin their retreat that the entire population, civilian and military, start to run. It becomes known as the runaway scrape because everybody is fleeing from the Mexican army of Santa Anna because they have heard about what has happened to the men at the Alamo and the men at Goliad, and that Santa Anna is going to drive every white person back across the Sabine River. At the Sabine, the U.S. Army is preparing just in case Santa Anna crosses certain borders that are disputed, such as the Natchitoches River, where if Sam Houston gets there and across it, there is a fear by Santa Anna's government, by Santa Anna himself and the U.S. government, that they will have to engage in hostilities over disputed territory. And Sam Houston knows this. He's quite the politician. But throughout this whole retreat, even though Sam Houston is getting volunteers and he's getting more men and certain supplies, the problem is that he's also got a lot of desertion. He's got a lot of problems with discipline and drill. His men are not, they're tough, they're courageous, and they can fight. But they are not men meant for long campaigns, nor for military discipline where they don't elect their own officers. They are quite hard to control. Sam Houston does his best, but the fact that he continues to retreat in the face of the Mexican army when a lot of his soldiers and officers are telling him not to, as well as the Texas government, which is fleeing at the moment, telling him to turn around and fight. And a lot of them actually do want revenge for what happened at Goliad and the Alamo. But Sam Houston, he manages to stay in control of the army, which does grow. But even though it's growing and it's becoming better, the problem is that he also has to deal with the Texas government, who actually, the president of the government, a guy named Burnett, he sends the Secretary of War, Thomas Rusk, to tell personally to Houston that he needs to turn and fight. Now, Sam Houston, being the political savvy guy he is, he manages to convince Rusk, listen, stay with the army and I'll show you what's going to happen. This is not a good idea for us to just turn and fight like that. We're not ready. He convinces Rusk, Secretary of War, he backs him. And so, by this point, Santa Anna is in a tricky spot. Yes, he's had some victories, but the only victory he's had personally was the Alamo, which could be called a Pyrrhic victory. Yes, he took the position, but it cost him a lot of lives. And now what does he do? Urrea has had several victories, and he sees Urrea, General Urrea, as a political rival now. So he needs to do something to burnish up his reputation again as Presidente. So what he decides to do is to chase down the Texas government. And so, with several forces splitting up, he takes about 700 personally to try and track down the Texas government and capture them. And they drive all the way to the coast, where at Galveston Bay, just after Burnett and the cabinet have pushed off on rowboats, the Mexican army reaches them. The only reason that the Mexican army doesn't open fire on them, even though they're within range, is because one of the officers says, no, there's women and children on those boats. There's families on there. We can't shoot them down. And anyway, they've achieved part of their goal. They've driven the Texas government away from the Texas land and away from the Texas army, with whom they can't communicate now. So Santa Anna turns his attention towards Sam Houston's army. And Sam Houston, at this point, obliges him. They meet on a battlefield that will become known as San Jacinto, or Jacinto. And with about 800 to 900 men and 2 cannons known as the Twin Sisters, Houston sets up his men in a woods where they're under cover, protected, and they set up camp. Santa Anna sets up in a very vulnerable position opposite them on an open field, where both his flanks are against swamps and creeks, and behind them there's only one bridge to get away. Throughout that day, April 20th, there are 2 skirmishes that happen between the 2 opposing forces, where there's an artillery fight between the single cannon held by the Mexicans and the Twin Sisters of the Texans. And it's really, nothing happens in that fight except that one of the Texas officers, John O'Neill, who was actually the previous commander at the Alamo before he left due to his family being ill. And he gets wounded. And then another officer in the Texas Army, Sidney Sherman, he asked for volunteers to stage a cavalry attack on Santa Anna's men during the day. He gathers up about 60 men. Sam Houston says, I applaud your bravery and your rush, but don't do it. Sidney Sherman ignores those orders and attacks. And they hit some of the Mexicans' forces. The problem is that when these cavalrymen of the Texas Army fight, they fire from horseback, and then they have to dismount and start shooting, reloading. That is not how the Mexican cavalry fights. They have swords and lances as well as pistols. And so it becomes very clear that Sidney Sherman and his men are in a lot of danger, including Secretary of War Thomas Rusk, who has joined him in this attack. And Houston sees this. A lot of his men see this. They're like, send us out of the woods and let us help them. Houston refuses, but a lot of his men, without orders, come out of the woods, face the Mexicans, who see this happening around them, and they're like, okay, we need to pull back. There's a lot of them. They're in the woods. Pull back. Sidney Sherman is angry at Houston for not attacking when he had the chance, as he puts it. Houston demotes him to infantry, and he puts one of the cavalrymen who distinguished himself, a man named Lamar Mirabal. I'm sorry, I don't really know how to pronounce it. And he will eventually become a future president of Texas. But at the moment, he's given command of the cavalry. And Sam Houston calls for a council of war the next day, April 21st, where he asks his officers what should they do. And they're all saying, let's just wait here for the Mexicans to attack. But they are even more adamant that they should wait to attack when they learn that 630 Mexican reinforcements under Santa Anna's brother-in-law, Cos, who has returned from Mexico to Texas, with reinforcements. So now they're outnumbered, and they feel that if they attack, they're going to get slaughtered, especially over an open field. But Sam Houston decides by the end of the day, no, we're going to attack. This is a chance. We have Santa Anna right here. We're ready to fight. And so, two things he orders. One, he orders his Texas Rangers, a unit of them under Deaf Smith, to get around Santa Anna's army and burn the bridge behind them, St. Vincent's Bridge, so that the Mexican army has no escape route. He also tries to order his Tejano unit under Juan Seguin and several other Tejano officers that they will guard the camp. He is worried that his Texan soldiers, the Anglos, won't distinguish between Mexican soldiers and Tejanos on their side. He's worried that they will start killing any Mexican they can get their hands on. Seguin and the others adamantly refuse. They're like, no, this is our fight too. We're fighting for our part of the country too. This is ours. And so he says, you know what? Put something on you that can identify you for our men. So they take playing cards and they stick them in their hats and their sombreros to identify them as part of the Texan army. At about, let me think, what time was it? It was about, about 4 to 4:30 when the Texans decide to attack. They come out of the woods, they fire with the twin sisters at the breastworks that have been built up by the Mexicans, and then they start going forward. They open fire with a volley of musket and rifles, and they charge straight in. They break ranks and they charge. Now, one reason for their success in this battle is going to be that Santa Anna, after a whole day of no attack, has decided that the Texans are waiting for him and they're not going to attack. Not this late in the day, they're just waiting for him to attack, and he can wait for reinforcements all day. So his men, he's given them orders to stand down. They're resting, sleeping, including Santa Anna himself. There's even a story that he was laying with a Texan woman who will become known as the Yellow Rose of Texas. But when Sam Houston's men attack, they hit that breastwork, they hit the Mexican forces, they catch them completely by surprise. Some of the officers of the Mexican army try to rally them, they try to get them under control, but they're being targeted by these riflemen very effectively. And within about 18 minutes, the entire Mexican force is routed from the field. They are running for their lives. But that's when the actual fighting is taking place, 18 minutes. For the next 2 to 2.5 hours, it is a slaughter, a massacre. Many of these Mexican soldiers are trying to flee. The Texan forces slaughter them. They're not taking prisoners for the moment. They're just shooting anybody they can get their hands on. They're clubbing them, they're bayoneting them, knifing them. Some of them are taking scalps. And all this while they're yelling, "Remember Goliad, remember the Alamo." It becomes their battle cry of revenge. There are some very individual stories about the killing that happens. Some of it happens around Peggy Swamp, where Mexican soldiers are trying to flee through the swamp and they're getting shot down. Many of them cross themselves, face the Texans and say, "Me no Alamo, me no Goliad." Doesn't matter. It's not until the Texan officers finally manage to regain control that the slaughter stops. Sam Houston himself is wounded in the foot, has 2 horses shot out from under him, and the battle's won. 600 to 700 Mexican soldiers are killed or wounded. Another 600 to 700 are taken prisoner. including, and then the Texans suffer only about 9 killed to 11, 9 to 11 killed or wounded. I'm sorry. 9 to 11 fatally killed. 9 to 11 killed or fatally wounded, and another 30 wounded. That's it. So, Mexican force is destroyed. Santa Anna seemingly escapes in the chaos, as does his brother-in-law, Cos. But by the next day, it is revealed that they have captured Santa Anna. He comes in wearing a private uniform, escorted by 3 Texans. And they don't realize the significance of their prisoner until many of his men start whispering and pointing at him. And then it's revealed, yes, it is Santa Anna that they have captured. So a lot of the Texans want to string him up right then and there. Sam Houston says, no, we're not going to do that. He's the president of Mexico. He can order these men, the rest of these soldiers, the Mexican soldiers that are on their way, he can order them to leave, stand down, leave Texas. And in exchange for his life, this is exactly what Santa Anna does. He sends orders to his generals to fall back behind the El Paso River to leave the Texas area. Many of them don't want to listen, but there's political considerations that they have to take into account. What if Santa Anna does come back very soon? What if Santa Anna is killed? What then? Who's to take his place? It's going to be another civil war just like that. And we still have to worry about the Texas government and the American government. What are they going to do? And so Santa Anna signs a treaty whereby he agrees to withdraw these troops and that he will lobby the Mexican Congress to recognize the Texas independence. It doesn't necessarily grant independence, but it does say he lobbies for it. And the Mexican government will never recognize Texas until after the Mexican-American War. Never. They never do. There are border skirmishes, there are fights between Texas and Mexico during this time period, before that. But there is no more large-scale fighting between Mexican and Texas forces until the Mexican-American War. So Sam Houston, thanks to his victory in San Jacinto, has secured Texas away from the Mexican government and has helped form the Republic of Texas. He becomes its first president, its second president, basically. And so this leads eventually to Texas becoming an independent nation for about 9 years before it's incorporated into the United States. San Jacinto, there are a lot of stories associated with it, but at this point, that's the end of the series, my friends. Santa Anna will be carted off to the United States to go on a tour and be invited to the White House by Andrew Jackson himself. He will later lead Mexican forces during the Mexican-American War and lose spectacularly. Sam Houston, when the Civil War comes, he sides with the Union, tries to keep Texas with the Union, and he is basically driven out of town. The only thing saving him, his life, being how honorable he's been as a Texan. So, Sam Houston dies in 1863, seeing the Union and that he's lived with his entire life being split apart, fighting itself. Santa Anna will die penniless in the 1880s, a forgotten man in many ways. But that's the end of the series, my friends. I hope you enjoyed it. I know it was a lot to cover, but thanks for listening, my wolf pack. Look forward to seeing you in the next video. Catch you later.